Brighton comrades. It's always lovely to be in Brighton, and although we're not indoors, they say the sun always shines on the righteous, comrades. It's not sunny, but it's not raining. So, look, you know, I've been a member of the Labour Party since 1976. I was an active member of the Anti-Nazi League, and, you know, racism was commonplace. I mean, despite my soft hands, I used to be a bricklayer in those days in the 1970s, and casual racism was quite commonplace on building sites, and I would always challenge it. I would never tolerate it. And any time I saw these vile, appalling, racist posters or leaflets, I would always tear them down and rip them up. And I've got to say, it was very distressing when I heard Charlie Faulkner, somebody who I've known for a long time, who I've shared platforms with in the past, saying on live radio that I was effectively a racist Nazi apologist. That's absolutely shameful. And I've written to Charlie to set out my record, to remind him how we used to share platforms together in the 1990s and early 2000s, and invited him to make a public apology. And I didn't actually point out to him, but at the time when I was challenging racism on building sites and nearly getting my head kicked in for my troubles, Charlie Faulkner was probably punting down the River Cam at Cambridge University. As somebody from a very privileged background, gone to public school, good luck to him. But I do take exception to someone like Charlie, with his very privileged background, attacking me on completely false grounds when I spent my entire life fighting racism, and I will fight racism till my dying day. Tony Benn once said, when he was challenging for the deputy leadership, it might have been at a meeting in Brighton, I'm not sure, but he was talking to the journalists, and he said, I don't care what they call me. They can call me a Marxist, they can call me a Trotskyist, they can call me a vegetarian, a flat earther, I don't care what they call me. He said, I know why they call us names. It's because they dare not face our arguments. What was true then is true today. We have an unanswerable, socialist, hopeful proposition that is overwhelmingly supported now by the vast majority of the British public. And there are people in the establishment, in the right-wing establishment in this country, who absolutely support the neoliberal consensus which has held sway now for over 40 years. And they can't countenance the prospect of a modest socialist Labour Party coming to power under a socialist Prime Minister in Jeremy Corbyn. And that's why we have to redouble our efforts to ensure that Jeremy is carried across the threshold of 10 Downing Street. And it is our mass movement that will make that happen. Not only is our mass movement crucial to ensuring that we carry Jeremy over the threshold of 10 Downing Street, it's essential to sustain it as in power when we get there. Because as John McDonnell has said, if you think it's bad, if you think it's rough now, just wait till we get into government. And we're desperately going to need a mass movement to sustain that socialist Labour government in power. And I want to talk a little bit, though, this evening about our economic agenda going into government, because I believe that we can have a very ambitious programme by embracing modern monetary theory, insights and principles. Because we are a sovereign currency, we have a sovereign currency in this country. We have our own central bank. We cannot max out the credit card. And if you think about it, it might be counterintuitive, but raising taxes doesn't pay for our public services. We pay for our public services by creating pounds sterling to pay for it. Anything which is available for sale in pounds sterling can be paid for by a government, any government for that matter. And you do not cause any inflationary pressures when you do that, so long as you only use that ability to pay for spare capacity in the economy. So the issue isn't about raising finance, it's not about taxing the rich in order to pay for our public services. It's about ensuring we have the capacity in the economy to actually do the things that are needed. So we need to be investing a lot more in our education service, for example. We absolutely should be not just scrapping tuition fees, but we should be wiping out the historic student loan debt as well. I quote Tony Benn quite a lot, but Tony Benn once said we should raise the school leaving age to 75 because he was so supportive of lifelong learning. And he said a week or two later received a letter from a disgruntled 85-year-old who said, "Why are you discriminating against me, Mr. Ben? I just graduated from the Open University, and according to your prospectus, I should be thrown on the scrapping." So he said, "Well, I've changed my position, therefore there should be no upper age limit on lifelong learning." So I think it's important that we build a grassroots movement around understanding how our monetary system operates in this country. Having our own central bank, having our own sovereign currency, gives us the ability to ensure that we can deliver the world-class services that the British people deserve. We are the 5th biggest economy in the world, and yet we've got people sleeping on the streets, in shop doorways, in Brighton, in Derby, in Nottingham, in Leicester, in London, in every town and city in our nation, in the 5th biggest economy in the world. How is that possible? It's an absolute disgrace. And so the issue for me, for all of us, I think, isn't about economic growth per se. It's about ensuring that the fruits of that economic growth are spread equitably so that we lift the living standards of the 99%. Yes. It's all about political will. My parents' generation fought the Second World War, and when they came back after the war, they said, "We're not going to go back to the indignity of the means test, to being fearful about falling ill or getting injured at work because they wouldn't be able to pay for their medical fees." And we know what the Tories are doing: privatising our National Health Service, privatising all our public services, using our public services as a cash cow. My view is we should kick the privateers out of all of our public services. And in the end, it's all about political will, just as it was in 1945 when Clem Attlee, Nye Bevan and the rest came to power. Winston Churchill had told them in the coalition government, "Don't go making any outlandish promises, we can't afford it." Debt to GDP was over 250%, but we built the health service, we built the welfare state, we built 1 million homes, we maintained full employment. We need to rediscover that spirit of 1945 today. And there's massive support for the program that we're putting forward. And why I talk about the need to build a mass support and a mass understanding of how the monetary system works, it's because we've been sold an illusion for far too long. We've been told we can't afford a decent pension for our people. We've been told you've got to work until you drop. You know, we can't afford to pay a decent wage for people. It's all nonsense. It's all built on a lie. It's all, in the end, about political will. And I think the important thing about understanding how, you know, the monetary system operates and how having our own sovereign currency and our own central bank means that we're not constrained in the way in which, you know, the commentators try to make out that we are. It's important that we understand that, because the way things are framed at the moment, it implies that we need these billionaires, that we need these oligarchs. And if you put the tax rates up too much, all these entrepreneurs, all these people that create these jobs, you know, they'll leave the country and we'll be in penury. It's a total lie. I mean, look, we don't need the rich. I mean, if they say they're going to go, I say close your door on the way out, mate. We do not need you. But we do, obviously, still need to tax. And the reason why we need to tax, well, there's a number of reasons behind it. The first reason, of course, is to give a value to the currency. Because if you think about it, it's just a bit of paper. Why does it have any value? It has a value because companies and individuals need to acquire pound sterling in order to pay their tax liability. So it creates a value for the currency. But we also need taxation to deal with inequality. We have grotesque inequality in our country. So yes, we tax to deal with inequality in our nation. That's very important. We also need tax to drive behaviour change. We want to move towards a sustainable economy. We want to, you know, behaviour change. We want people to use more environmental vehicles, for example. We can drive behaviour change through the tax system. But what we don't need to do is to tax in order to pay for our public services. That is just a myth. And it's really important, I think, we get to sort of understand that. And we start then to demand, you know, a greater share of the wealth of this very wealthy nation, the fifth biggest economy, as I say, in the world. And in the end, it's about, you know, political priorities. But as well as, you know, valuing students, valuing education, scrapping tuition fees and buying out the historic student loan book, I think we should also make some other big ticket offers, like honouring the WASPy women as a bare minimum. We need to demand that. And we need to say there is no excuse for not doing that. Because we have our own sovereign currency, we have our own central bank. We're not constrained in the way in which we've been told that we are. So if you invest in the economy, you know, if you pump money into the economy, if you put money in the pockets of ordinary working people, what do they tend to do? They tend to spend it, don't they? So that helps to generate and sustain other jobs, doesn't it? And so you create an economic virtuous circle. And as socialist, as Labour Party supporters and members, surely we should all get behind that, shouldn't we? I don't understand why anybody would be against having a fairer, more equitable, decent society. And one of the things I also often say is that we should all become 21st century Luddites. Because what do the Luddites want? I know it's used as a pejorative term. All the Luddites were saying is let technology be our servant, not our master. And there's no reason why technology has to go in a particular direction. If it's not in the interests of the population as a whole, well, why do we want it? But you know, I grew up at a time in the 1960s when we were being told to get ready for the leisure generation. I don't know if anybody remembers that. By the 1990s, apparently, we were only going to be working 15 hours a week. What happened? Well, I'll tell you what happened. Neoliberalism happened, Margaret Thatcher happened, Ronald Reagan happened, Tony Blair happened, and they bought into the neoliberal myth. Now, of course, you know, the new Labour government did some decent things, but we didn't fundamentally transform the economy. We cannot make that mistake again. What we absolutely have to do when we win the next election, when we carry Jeremy over the threshold of 10 Downing Street, is we have to make those fundamental reforms to our society, to our economy, to bring about an irreversible shift in the balance of income, wealth and power in our country. Irreversible. And that's why the establishment, that's why the corporations, the elites are frightened to death of a Jeremy Corbyn-led Labour government. Because our manifesto last time, and it will be more radical next time, it needs to be, talked about introducing the right to own. You may have seen that in the manifesto, giving workers the right to buy out their company when it's going to be sold off, or assets for offshore for low-wage economies. To make sure that we put in workers in control of their own destiny. And Keir Hardie said about 100 years ago, we've got democracy in the political sphere. It's now time to introduce democracy into the industrial sphere as well, and we haven't made much progress in that direction. And we need to. And building a network of worker cooperatives will enable us to get there. And our commitment to put workers on the boards, it's not a panacea, but it's moving in the right direction. It isn't that radical. In Germany, since 1976, every company with more than 2,000 employees, by law, must elect half of the board of directors from within the workforce. So, you know, we're not being radical enough. If you look at some of the opinion polls, more than 50% of the public want to bring all of the financial institutions into public ownership. We're only talking about creating one national investment bank. So maybe we're being too moderate, perhaps. But look, I think the future belongs to us, I really do. We've got overwhelming support for our policy agenda. There's never been an easier time to campaign for Labour's programme because there's massive support for it in the country as a whole. And so our job as this mass movement is to take that message of hope out there, to sort of build this kind of greater understanding of the economic sphere, to demand that the economy works for all of us, to demand that we democratise our economy so that it works in the interest of all of us. And because, you know, another world isn't just possible, it's within touching distance, comrades. And so we have to keep hope alive. We have to engender that hope. We have to get out into those communities, the communities that don't often turn out and vote. Remember the biggest cohort in every election, the non-voters. Because people feel politics doesn't speak to them. It doesn't work for them. That's our failure, because they are predominantly our people. And so we've got to do better. And this mass movement will enable us to do better. To take that message of hope out into the community, out into those working class and excluded communities, and bring them in to our movement, because our movement is their movement. And in that wonderful film, The Shawshank Redemption, there's a great line where Red Redding says to Andy Dufresne, hope is a very dangerous thing in this place, Andy. And he said, no, Red, hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies. So that's why I say it's our job to keep hope alive. And remember Tony Benn's words, that the reason they attack us, the reason they call us names, the reason they smear us is they dare not face our argument. And let me just conclude with the words of Percy Shelley in the final verse of The Mask of Anarchy, when he said, rise like lions after slumber in unvanquishable number, shake your chains to earth like dew, which in sleep have fallen on you. We are many, they are few.